Welcome back to part 3 of our Midweek special series. This week, instead of talking performance numbers, we're talking finance numbers. And yes, I know this is a subject that's been done a million times, but coming from an independent dealership like us, there are still some fundamentally simple things that people just don't understand or just don't know. So, how do people afford these cars? And what are some important things you should know before you sign the dotted line? Let's have a look, shall we? My name's Tom, and you're watching Paragon Cars. Let's go. Now, before we start, I just want to preface this video by saying this is not financial advice and you should always do your own research. Anyway, to keep this video simple and digestible, we're just going to focus on two types of finance today. PCP, otherwise known as personal contract purchase, and HP, otherwise known as hire purchase. If you have any other questions after you've finished watching, please let us know in the comments below and we'll do our best to answer them. Right, let's get started. So, the first issue some people have is not understanding what lenders are and how they work in a dealership environment. I really want you to listen to this next statement. The dealership is not the finance company or the lender. They are the finance intermediary, a middleman, and merely facilitate different ways of buying a car. So, what does that mean? Well, it means the dealership, e.g. us, that you buy the car from, has no influence over the decision to lend or what your interest rate is. The only thing we can do is offer the cheapest quote we've received from our panel of lenders. Now we know that, what else is there to know about lenders? Well, it's that there's a lot of them. So we as a dealer use as many lenders as possible to get you the best possible price. Anyway, what's the difference between PCP and HP finance? Well, in layman's terms, PCP, or personal contract purchase, allows you to pay a lower monthly figure than hire purchase by having a balloon payment at the end. Hire purchase finance is effectively like a regular loan. You just pay a fixed monthly cost until the car is paid off. Of course, because of that lower monthly figure, many people are going for PCP finance, as it allows them to keep more cash in the bank upon purchase. That's not always a good thing though. We'll get into why in a minute. Now, in both types of finances, you don't own the car until you've paid every single penny off. This is important to understand as it means there's usually terms to your agreement, e.g. no modifications and a mileage allowance. If a finance company finds out your car has been heavily modified, they're fully within their right to ask for payment in full, so keep that in mind next time you fancy a remap. The mileage allowance is a bit more lenient though. In most cases, the worst case that can happen is your car is worth slightly less when you give it back. Just don't go crazy. Moving on to credit scores. Do they really affect what rate you get? Well, yes, of course they do. But unless you've defaulted on a payment in the past, it's unlikely that the finance rate offered to you will be much worse than someone with outstanding credit. Of course, having a good score is still helpful though, and one of the quickest ways to get one is with a credit card. Once you have the card, make sure to not spend more than a third of the monthly allowance on it, and also be sure to set up a direct debit of payments to the card, so it will automatically get paid off every month. One other pretty useful tip is to make sure you're on the electoral roll, as it shows you have a permanent address. Finance companies like this, as in a worst case scenario where they have to repossess the car, they know exactly where to find you. Something that's more important than your credit score though is your affordability score. Finance companies can look at previous bank statements to see exactly how much you can afford each month, and actually what your spending habits are as well. So before you apply, make sure you can comfortably afford the car you want, as if you miss a payment, it will really harm your credit. Moving on to rates. What does APR and flat rate even mean, and what's the difference between the two? Well, APR is an entire video in and of itself, so we'll just steer clear of that one for now. But a flat rate is fairly simple. Say you take out a £10,000 loan over 60 months / 5 years with a flat interest rate of 5%. 5% of £10,000 is £500. So over 1 year, you'll be charged £500 of interest. That means over 5 years, you'll pay £2,500 of interest, giving you a total of £12,500. It seems like a lot, but that's because you're charged 5% on the total amount borrowed each year, not the amount you have left to pay. Now we come to the next not very well known point of how exactly that interest is paid off. Well, with a PCP deal, you're mainly going to be paying interest first, meaning that monthly figure coming out of your bank account each month isn't going towards as much of the value of your car as you might think. Hire purchase is slightly more forgiving though, as it's more of an even split between interest and the car's value being paid off in that monthly figure. Let's have a look at an example between PCP and HP on this Audi RS5, both with a 10% deposit. On the left is the PCP and on the right is the HP. Initially, most people look at the monthly figure and call it a day, hence why most people end up with a PCP deal. That can be a big mistake though, as remember I said you're mainly going to be paying interest off first in that monthly figure. That monthly figure being £685.56 of course. Why is that bad though? Well, if you decide you want to change your car early on in your PCP agreement, like many people do, you can be faced with something called negative equity. And that is bad. Very bad indeed. Negative equity is what happens when the value of the car is lower than what you owe. So say you still owe £40,000 to the finance company for that lovely RS5, but the car's only worth £36,000. That means you owe the finance company £4,000 to just get out of the deal. Big ouch. This is why HP is generally a better option in most cases, as not only would you pay less interest overall, you'd be much less likely to go into negative equity. Not only because the monthly figure is higher, but also because more of that monthly figure is going towards the value of the car rather than the finance company's pockets. Let's look at another example. This is a slightly more affordable VW Golf. Again, as you can see, the HP agreement is cheaper overall due to the total amount of interest being lower. Plus, again, remember, most of that PCP monthly figure will be going towards paying off the interest initially. Regardless of which deal you go for though, plan on keeping the car for a while, as you may even get some money back towards another deposit at the end of the deal. HP is still the most flexible deal though. Say you had a change of circumstances and can no longer afford the monthly figure for it. Chances are you'll be able to sell the car and not owe anything to the finance company. Finally, I want to show you what finance looks like on a slightly older car. In most cases, PCP deals can only be done on cars 0 to 5 years old. So we're just making do with a hire purchase agreement here. This one's quite interesting though, as the value of the car is likely to go up over the time you have it. So, say you pay the vehicle's value of £29,949 off, as well as the total interest of £4,743. That means you've paid £34,692 in total over those 55 months. Now you've come to sell it, and the dealership is offering you £40,000 to take it off your hands, even though you've added 24,000 miles to the clock since you've been driving it. Well son, you've just made a profit of £5,308 on a financed product. So whilst the running costs are certainly high on this car, the total cost of ownership in the end actually ends up being much more reasonable. This situation happens with many cars that suddenly become future classics. For example, people were buying the BMW 1Ms for £30,000 a couple of years ago, then a year later selling them for over £50,000. Sometimes you even get an instant classic like the Toyota GR Yaris. People again bought these for 30 grand but ended up taking them to We Buy Any Car just the next month and selling them for 34. Anyway, what are the main takeaways from this video? Number 1, don't just look at that monthly figure. It may seem cheap at first, but can put you in a really sticky situation later. 2, look at the total amount of interest you owe. If you're not happy with the figure, you can look elsewhere for a better deal, e.g. a bank or a supermarket loan. 3, try and pay what you owe as quick as you can and don't always go for the longest possible term. Not only will you not pay as much interest, but if you want to change cars quickly, you'll be more likely to get some money back towards another deposit. And avoid negative equity. 4, remember the dealer is not the lender. We have no control over what interest rate you get. All we can do is find the cheapest lender available to us. And finally, look for cars that don't depreciate quickly, e.g. luxury barges. Not only will you be more likely to get money back at the end of the term, you might even make a profit if the car's gone up in value. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like, and why not subscribe? As not only can you see more content like this, you can also see everything we have for sale. My name's Tom, and you've been watching Paragon Cars. I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.